Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN member Michael Anderson on the show today. Mike got his start as a real estate agent before shifting into financial planning in a bank setting. He was there for about 9 years before working at a hybrid or fee-based RIA, and then launched his own firm back in 2016 with XY Planning Network. It was interesting to hear about the differences he experienced providing financial planning in the 3 different environments and why ultimately he moved to being fee-only. Mike has about 48 clients, and he talked about his financial planning and investment management service models and how he's built his firm to serve clients of all wealth levels. We also talked about the work he has done with victims of the California wildfires, with 6 of his clients experiencing severe damage or total loss of their houses last year. Mike is also really involved in Rotary and talked about the wonderful mentors he's met through his involvement there, and his piece of advice at the end of the episode came from one of those mentors. Support for today's episode comes from Orion Advisor Services. Liberate yourself from the back office tedium, slowing your growth with Advisor's easy-to-use, easy-to-scale portfolio management technology platform. Supporting a range of performance reporting, fee billing, trading, compliance, and client experience needs, it's tech that works as hard for you as you do for your clients. Build a better business so you can build a better life with Orion Advisor. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/165. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Mike. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Really appreciate it. Great to be here.
So if you would, could you give listeners just a quick overview of your business, sort of who you are, where you're located, how many clients you have, and then we'll dig into all the details as we go.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I'm located here in Ventura, California, just south of Santa Barbara and just north of Los Angeles. I've been born and raised here and went away for school up to Northern California, came back and opened my business. This is the second business that I've owned, but it was at a point in my life, 27 years old, and I knew that I wanted to do this and have a relationship business and help people. In November, it will be 2 years that I've had my shop open, and so I'm very excited about that. But yeah, that's 27 years old. I knew I wanted to be in the relationship business. I love helping people. So I should say, I went into the banking industry for 10 years, and I was a financial advisor in a bank branch. And then at 37 is when I started with XY as far as opening my own shop. And you guys helped me do that, 2 years ago, essentially. And it's been a very interesting and fun ride. And I'm excited to talk about that today. But for me, I'm a financial planner that focuses on advisory. So I look for assets to gather, but also the planning. And those are the 2 things that I try and go into. And I'm still honing out my story that I share with clients and prospects about how we navigate that. I find it extremely confusing for the clients to understand the process of how we work through that. And everyone's a little bit different. So it's been, essentially 10 years that I've been in the business, 2 almost now that have been my own firm, but I still don't have the clear picture in my mind of how I want it to look. Because it's not the same for everybody as far as the process they go through. We need to be adaptable to the client a little bit to what they're looking for, but we also need to give them a solid experience. So anyhow, that's just a little bit about my business and where I'm at.
So how many clients are you currently working with?
So right now I have 2 platforms for advisory. So I'm using Betterment and Motif. And on Betterment, I have 21 clients. On Motif, I have 27 clients. And then up to this point, I've done 18 paid financial planning clients. So there's a little bit of overlap there, but
yeah, that was going to be my next question was, so some of those financial planning clients, are they now on Betterment or Motif for an ongoing relationship?
Some of them are.
Okay.
Some of them have just done financial planning only, and some of them have done advisory only. It's presented a little different kind of approach, just having some folks that are advisory only or some folks that are planning only. But that's kind of to the point of what I was saying. I want to, for the most part, understand where the client's at and try and adapt to, I think, the needs that they have, whether it's purely planning or going direct into advisory.
So taking a step back, you mentioned that you started your first business at 27 and you were in banking for 10 years. So I'm assuming those are connected. So I guess how did you wind your way into that first, I guess, early in your career? And then tell me a little bit about the business that you started at 27.
Well, I should say that's 27 is when I got into, I took my first, the Series 6 and 7 and got all my licenses at age 27 with Washington Mutual Financial, WAMU Bank out here on the West Coast. And before that, out of college, I worked in real estate. And so I did that. And I just did not like how it was a transactional business. I wanted more of a relationship business. And a few folks that I met through the Rotary Club had said, hey, why don't you look into doing, financial advisory work? And so they recruited me like to Morgan Stanley, and then I interviewed with Merrill Lynch. And at the time, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't necessarily want the experience that I know that they're providing working in a wirehouse where you're kind of going to get in and you're going to go and you're going to try and sell. And if you make it through their hurdles, then you keep going. And if you don't, and a lot of them don't, then you go find another path. And it was just something that I was not naive. I was not too naive to just go and do that. I think like a lot of people they try and recruit are. So I took a different path and went down the bank channel and was excited to go down that channel. I was an assistant for about a year and a half. And then I was a member of a bigger team for another 3 years. And yeah, I think it takes the thing that I'll say that I got from that experience. And I'm just talking specifically about being an assistant in that bank channel there's a learning curve to the industry when you talk about advisory and managing people's assets and talking to them about their money. I feel like there definitely is a learning curve there to where you need to find your way to be comfortable talking with people about something they care so much about. Everybody cares so much about money, and money, there's all of those adages about it. Like it can bring out the best in people. It can bring out the worst in people. And, there's clients I have now that say, I never knew my brother until we had to split up our parents' estate. And now they don't talk. And that's just in my, now being a parent and having kids, that's like a worst nightmare. I'd never want that to happen to my kids. So good planning can kind of hopefully alleviate some of that. And I recognize that. And I feel like that's, part of the help I want to try and offer and help people understand that that's what they get when they do good planning.
So how do you learn that? Because I 100% agree that learning how to talk to clients and learning how to have really hard conversations and talk about the things that matter to them most, things that they may have never shared with anybody else before. How do you learn to do that besides just tripping over yourself and regretting what you said to a client year after year until you just sort of get better at it? Are there ways to get better, do you think?
Well, certainly. I mean, and that's one of the things I love about XY with you guys and the help that you guys offer. I came to you already having 8 years in the business, and I came to you guys seeing everything that you're doing, and you do such a remarkable job at helping people that maybe hadn't had those 8 years experience, but get that learning curve quickly and accelerate that learning curve by things like the coaching programs, the marketing programs. All of these things that you guys are offering are phenomenal to help people learn and learn the right way. I feel like when I learned, it was very much more trial and error. Like get out there, here's the clients, here's the team. When they call, we need to do this. And having had the business that I had from, essentially from 23 to 27 in real estate, I understood some of the entrepreneurial side of helping people. But then going through the process of learning this new way to talk to people in financial planning. I guess essentially I like to say the rules of the game. You need to know the rules of the game of how you can help people and what you do. A lot of it comes with you need to go out and try. You need to go out and have experience. It's good to do the coaching programs like the things you guys offer. That's tremendous. But also at some point, you need to get out of the batting cages and into the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you just have to do it. And it won't be perfect the first few times, and it will be something that you need to work on and will take time. But if you're diligent about trying to be, aware of what you're saying and how it's relating to the client and how they're experiencing what you're saying, it will keep getting better. And that's important. That's really important to just, figure out, hone in your story and your message. And I'll tell you, you get that conviction and you get that confidence after you've done it so many times, just like anything else. But you have to start somewhere, and you cannot, belittle yourself. You should not be like really, hurting yourself to not start. You have to just start and try and hone that in. I know a lot of people, like when I went to the first XY event, when I joined the one in San Diego, I know a lot of these newer folks that were just joining that I was talking to, that was a sticking point for them. They just weren't quite comfortable talking to the clients about some of these difficult conversations or about their money in a way that you almost need to be to do a good job with folks. And, you just got to dive in and do the best you can and try and improve each step of the way. That's my feeling.
And in a way, that's sort of like, it's the phrase of, perfection is the death of innovation and creativity and all of those things, and just wanting to be perfect and feeling like, well, I don't know if I'm good enough to do it yet. And the truth is you just have to do it, is really the reality. But I think my advice for folks is just being aware that you're having tough conversations and that the way you communicate matters. I think puts you ahead of probably 90% of financial advisors or people that call themselves financial advisors, just because I think so many folks are completely oblivious to the depth and the importance of the conversations that they're having with their clients. And so just being aware of it, I feel like awareness is half the battle, just because then you start to catch yourself saying things that may be belittling or offensive or just wrong, and may be hurting your client's feelings or whatever it is. But it's amazing what little things that we say can have such a big impact. And just being aware of that fact and actually thinking about things that you're saying will really put you ahead of the game, I think.
And so much of this job is the soft skills, Alan. It's not the advice we give always for the purity of the advice, but it's the soft skills of being able to talk to someone, being able to listen to someone and just hear what they say and address what they say. And so you're not, you don't have to come out there and say, hey, I just got this CFP and I know all these, different really cool things. And let me tell you about a charitable remainder trust and then blah, like you don't hit people with that. That never like goes out of your mouth into their ears in a very impactful way. It's most impactful, I think, from the coaching I got from a wonderful advisor that I worked with early in my career is he said, like 80% of it's just being there. Just be present with them when you're there and listen to what they're saying and try and just address that first. Let them air out their, what's on their radar, what's on their mind. What would you like to see if we decide to move forward? How would you like to see this progress? What does, a good financial experience with someone like me look like? Can you describe that to me? And just let them say that at the very beginning of the meeting, and you'll know kind of what they're looking for. And that's what you want to address. That's kind of what you want to address at some point in the meeting, probably sooner. And in addition to that, you could also share how you like to work. Like, so, you know what they're looking for. And then through the process of this meeting, we're also going to talk about how I go through and help people that are looking for what you described to me. And we're going to do this and this, and we're going to have a questionnaire for you. You're going to fill that out. And then after we get that, I'm going to have a getting organized and prioritized meeting, and I'll have documents ready. And you kind of describe it for them, and you start to look across the table and you see their head nodding. Or if you're doing it online, you see they're shaking their head up and down, like this is exactly what they want. So I think part of that skill comes with time, and I'm getting better at it all the time as well. But is just understanding the process, your process, whatever process you want to have, to walk them through that and have them feel like you're leading them the whole way. You know exactly what you're doing and where you want to take them. And it's going to be something that they feel good about. It's always good when you see the client nodding, from across the table as you're talking.
Right. Yeah, I love your point there about clients don't care about charitable remainder trust, right? They don't care about grats and gruts and in what type of insurance, all that. What they care about is what are their goals, and does your tool or your mechanism or your advice help them accomplish those goals? So they don't really care about the structure of a charitable remainder trust. What they care about is what they're doing. Does a charitable remainder trust help them accomplish their goals? And staying really focused on that, because I think a lot of times as advisors, when we get stressed, we tend to just dive into the details, and that's great. I don't feel like advisors need to prove how smart they are to their clients. Doctor never walks into the room and says like, if you'll hold on one second, let me explain to you how I get paid and why I'm so smart and all my credentials and degrees and fellowships, right? We just freaking go to the doctor and they just talk to us, it's fine.
Exactly. But they go through residency to learn some of those skills, and they spend a few years working with seasoned folks to kind of really, and they're graded every step of the way. So they're being aware and they're trying to, do it the right way and learn the right way. And, my brother-in-law is a doctor, and he, all the stories I heard of his residency where it was, they want you to talk to the patients in a certain way to command some of the respect that you know what you're talking about. Especially like someone like him, he looks like he's 11 years old. Like he just does. So
just always.
So in residency, they're like, hey, you gotta, that's what they're going to be thinking. And there's no sense in ignoring that. You just have to be able to speak confidently so they don't question that, and you have to, you do have this knowledge, but you need to know how to use it in the right way. And that's a funny thing. I struggled with that when I first got into, doing the financial advisory work, is that, I always like to explain things and try and educate people. And this is how it works. And this is so cool because it does this and it does that. And someone along the line said, hey, Mike, I just like to know what time it is when I look at my watch. I don't really care how the watch is built. Like, just just help me out with what time it is. And it's like, hey, man, I get it. Let's do that.
Because if they loved it half as much as you did, then, they would be a financial planner themselves.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess what made you decide to start your own practice? Sounds like you were in banking for a long time, but starting your own business, was that the first time you were doing financial planning, or were you doing financial planning before launching your own firm a couple of years ago?
No, yeah, I was doing financial planning the whole way. So I was a financial advisor in a bank branch, from 2007 up until 2000 and when was that? 2016?
So 16, I guess.
And then I was for 1 year, I was with an RIA that was one of these fee-based RIA. So it was great because they had financial planning, and that was a big thing for them. But they also sold, insurance and annuities and had commission products as well. So they kind of had this hybrid approach. And I was planning on buying their firm. It was someone from the Rotary Club that I'm in, and it didn't quite work out. But at that point, a year in, when we realized that the timing wasn't right, that was about the same time I discovered XY Planning Network. And that's when I joined on with you guys and just had such a tremendous experience with the help that you guys offer, because it was exactly what I needed. It was, it was just information and insight and a network and helping me get my papers, filed here in California, and creating the ADV and all the other things that you need to create, and having some templates and those calls with the compliance side to learn what I needed to do and how it needs to be set up. It just answering questions as I had them was such a big thing for me. So, but no, yeah, that's kind of how I came into XY, was finding it. And it was really the right point in my career where I knew I wanted to have my own firm. And it's exactly how I want to have it, which is, ethically in this business, there's that whole side of are you, what are you serving the client to their best interest and giving them objective advice for what they're looking for? Or are you, serving essentially the firm or your own bottom line with the GDC that you're creating, and the commissions and the revenues? And in the banking industry, it was, it's never really talked about, but obviously if there's a product that pays 6%, and then another product that only pays, half of 1%, there's an incentive there, and it happens all the time that this product that pays 6% is the one that gets more strongly recommended. And so I just never felt comfortable with that ethically. And it was great, to be able to start the business and run the business the way that I want to run it, which is exactly how you guys are promoting people to do it, as a fee-only financial advisor and planner.
So talk to me, you've seen financial planning in three different worlds. You've seen it from the banking world, you've seen it from the fee-based world, and now you've seen it from the fee-only world. How would you describe to someone who's interested in financial planning and sort of trying to decide what type of structure they want to do financial planning in? How would you describe your different experiences, specifically inside the model at those three different types of firms where you can do financial planning? It's just going to be different in each place.
Yeah. Well, the banking channel, from the outside of it, you think, well, I'm going to be a part of the bank. I'm going to have my own desk there. They have clients that are bank clients that are going to want advice. And so naturally you'll have, people to work with. In any business, that's kind of what it comes down to, is who's my client? How do I get new clients or establish enough clients to work with? And so that's the whole, I guess, side of in the banking. But in reality, you're getting a bank branch or bank branches that you're working with, and it's still very difficult to find clients. They want you working with some of the clients in the bank, but there's limitation rules on how they can refer them. And it's harder to actually get people to work with in the bank channel because there's a growing kind of, I don't know, I feel like there's a growing level of concern with the banks and, what their incentives are. And I think we're seeing that more. So it's harder to be a bank financial advisor today than it was maybe 20 years ago.
So real quick, you mentioned that it's harder to refer clients over. Talk to me about that. Is that something to do in the banking ethics rules around referring clients between different things that they offer, or something else?
Yeah. There's a very strong regulatory environment inside the bank branches as far as what banks can do referring. Say, for example, Mr. Smith comes in and has a $250,000 CD that it just expired and he's going to roll it over and do a new CD. I mean, it would be nice in theory if you could say, well, here are the CD rates, here's the municipal bond rates, here's, a new portfolio that we can talk about, and kind of here's essentially all of the options, not just a CD rate, that we would. So it would be nice if it was that way, but it's not. Like they just say, okay, well, you have a new CD you want to roll over, here's the new CD rates, and there's limitations as to, number one, they want them to refer that client to the advisor, but it just doesn't happen very often. And there's strong regulatory issues with having them refer them, or to the extent they can incentivize that banker or teller to refer them. So it's just not easy.
Makes sense. So one of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times is being active in the Rotary Club. So can you, I guess for anybody who doesn't know what Rotary is, you can sort of fill us in on what is Rotary and sort of how has being involved in a networking group like that benefited your career, or has it?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, there's a number of ways I can just quickly cite for you. But so the Rotary Club, and they have these everywhere, it's a service organization. So, you think about in your city, in your town, wherever you're at, there's a number of these, I'm sure. The Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, Sir Optimus Club. There's just different groups locally where people come together and they try and organize either events or do things, as a group that will hopefully raise some money and do some good in the community. And so that's, for me, in school, I was always involved in kind of gravitated toward these extracurricular things like student government or leadership, where you're planning the dances and you're doing activities over the lunch period. And so after school and after college, I was kind of just working, and I was like, there's got to be more, and I kind of went and visited, at least here in Ventura, I went and visited the Kiwanis and Lions and Rotary clubs, and I really like this group, and they do. They just do a lot of things, but just about all of them, the format is they meet for lunch. So they eat, and then they you're meeting people you'd otherwise not meet. There are a lot of times leaders in the community. They have their own that's 30 minutes. And then they have 30 minutes of kind of announcements and other things that are coming up. So kind of some internal business type stuff that you're a part of. And then usually the last 30 minutes is a speaker or program they've invited someone from the community to come in and talk. So it could be the sheriff or just, someone that has a relevant story to share. And so you really get your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the city, because there's always people and programs coming in each week. But through that experience, when I joined initially, I was 25. And so there's a lot of folks in there. I think the average age is like 63. So it was really unique being the young guy in a kind of an older person's group. But it was really neat though, because what you get when in an experience like that, and it worked for me, I felt comfortable, was you get a lot of mentors. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. One of the most powerful things I think someone shared with me at the Rotary Club was, hey, when I was your age, I was putting irons in the fire. And now at my age, at 68, I'm starting to take them out. And, and he really, well-to-do gentleman that had, a number of properties and businesses and other things. But, that I think that can resonate with all of us in some ways, at XY, where it's like, yeah, that's essentially, you got to think of that longer time horizon. You can't always think about the quick, how do I start today and I want to make 300 grand in 12 months? It's like, well, yeah, that could happen. But, let's be a little more realistic and let's also think about, the longer side of it and understand what that looks like. But it's been a great organization, a great group, a lot of mentors, like I said. And for the last 10 years, I've also taught at the local community college, Ventura College. And I got that job because of someone I met through Rotary.
What class do you teach?
So I've taught a number of classes now, but it's computer applications in business scenarios. So a lot of just the basics of, using the computer. In many ways, I feel like it's outdated because it's still heavily, the Microsoft suite, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. But that's been a big one. Real estate finance has been one. I've taught, federal taxes. But it's been a neat thing to be a part of that institution and to sit on the other side of the desk. That just an interesting paradigm shift to be involved with that. But that's a direct byproduct of being involved in the Rotary, and kind of just, it's not always what it's sometimes who can help you, get to the table and interview for a job that you would otherwise not have even, applied for.
Sure. It wouldn't have known about and couldn't have gotten your foot in the door, which is, super interesting. So talk to me about whenever you went to launch a firm, did you have or have you developed some sort of niche or client focus, or do you see some similarities between the clients that you're working with?
Gosh, that's one thing where I feel like I've struggled or not been super focused on. Having had experience, I came in and I was like, I don't want to, there's not really a specific niche I'm going to target. I totally agree with the idea of having a focus and being very good in that one area. So it's definitely a good model. But having had experience in the industry, I kind of came in, it was important for me, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit more too, but it was important for me to have an offering that was available to the folks that, maybe were the most vulnerable in our society. And the thing I share with people is, the financial industry for far too long has served the top 20% of income earners and net worth. And who helps? Who's there trying to help the other 80%? There's just no incentive and there's no sustainable business model to make that work. And I think that's wrong, and that's been wrong for a long time. So for me, and with, the technology now, it's made it more possible for there to be a business model that would allow help for that 80%. And so I don't want to ignore and not help the 20% that we've all been trying to help forever. So I have some clients in that category, but I definitely have wanted to be able to have an offering that allows help to that bottom 80%. That's what I grew up in. That's what my parents were. And so in many ways though, and I'm at a point where I'm trying to reevaluate my structure. And this is important for anyone starting out, just figuring out your ADV and how you're going to, bill and what it's going to cost for your financial planning clients. And if there's project based or packages and then what you're going to charge if you're doing advisory. I mean, all those are big things that you really need to try and, center around what it's going to look like 1, 2, 3 years down the road as you evolve in your career with that. But But I feel like in many ways, Alan, I'm priced too low, but I want to be sensitive to these clients that are such a part of who I want to help. So it's almost like a little bit of cannibalism. Like I've had some great client meetings recently where folks could definitely handle paying, $2,500 that package, but they're electing to go with the $500 package just because it's, it looks better on paper. So it's interesting. It's something that I have to work through and figure out, but I definitely am not going to not offer services to this lower 80%.
Yeah. And honestly, I'd push back and say it's probably more like 95%. When we look at, about 5 to 7% of Americans have $500,000 or more in investable assets. So, the traditional AUM model has really served them. If we want to, lump in folks have been selling on commission, so therefore they haven't, cared as much necessarily just about AUM, it may expand. But yeah, most Americans have not been able to access financial advice, especially not real financial planning. So I'm with you on that. Talk to me about your structure. So you have the investment management and you have the financial planning. So it sounds like you have 2 financial planning packages. So can you talk about those 2, how you price it and any changes that you're thinking about making?
Yeah, definitely. So I've set it up where I have what I call the on track package. So this is trying to see if you're on track, and if you're off track, we'll get you on track. Essentially, it's 3 meetings. The first meeting is just an initial consultation. There's no charge for that meeting. Just trying to, hopefully allow you to get to know me and me get to understand your situation, what you're looking for, and we'll see if it makes sense to do business together and progress forward. But that's the first meeting. The second meeting is getting organized and prioritized, where we're trying to decide, what the goals are and getting all of the information as far as what you have into my financial planning software. And the third meeting, I have these 2 deliverables that I'm going to present to you that are essentially the financial plan through my financial planning software, and then also an outline plan, that really show what your goals are and how you're doing. And that's like a 3-page document that I've typed up. And so for that on track package, it's $500. You get those 2, the 3 meetings and then the 2 deliverables. And then you also have access to me for questions. We can have a meeting or we can discuss what's in the plan for the year. So for remaining 12 months.
That's a pretty intensive process. I can see why people are electing for that to buy that service, because that a lot of times for that $500 price point, we see advisors offer like, we're going to focus on one topic, maybe 2, but really it's probably one, like when can I retire, or what's my retirement income, or how do I pay down my student loans, whatever it is. There's really one thing. It sounds like you're doing almost more of a comprehensive plan for that $500.
I call it a comprehensive plan. I do. And essentially, when I look at the time I put into it, it's been it's only about 8 hours. It's 5 to 8 hours. So what I hear, what I'm very aware of, and it hasn't happened yet, is when I'm offering, that ability to have access, I'm concerned that someone might overuse that. And I have not experienced that really yet, but it's just been something to where, I feel like as well, and I don't know this is one area where I'm not certain, but I feel like my planning, I use Advisor and I go, we do the initial run of the plan, but I'm not doing, regular monthly like check-ins and, additional implementation. So that's what segregates the next plan up. And I have not had many of these plans, but essentially it's the stewardship plan. And with this, it starts the same way as the on track plan, but there's just a little bit more to it. And in this plan, we're having formal quarterly meetings to help hold you accountable to implement, what we've decided needs to be implemented, to reach our goals. And so I'm just working a little bit more closely with you to help you implement that. And then in addition to that, this is being recommended, the stewardship plan, if there are folks that have, issues that are a little bit more comprehensive. So with some folks, it's just going to be more time and energy that goes into the plan. And then, so that's what would warrant, the higher fee. And that's $2,500 for the year of service, but you get more formal meetings to help implement. And you also get, help with some of these more comprehensive issues. And the thing with that plan is that it's just going to be more time essentially that we're spending together. So that's why I've upped the price. but that's very much in line with what the previous firm that I was with, the RIA for a year, that was their service offering as far as price points. And they had it down where they were making, 150,000 a year in revenue just from planning. So they had a nice kind of revenue stream that they had built up over, the 20 years that they had been in business, doing that. And so I just kind of stuck with their pricing model.
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I would say, $200 an hour has always been like the earmark that I've heard. Obviously, in California, a little higher. I mean, I was at $200 an hour in Wisconsin when I first started my firm. So you are spending a lot of hours on that initial plan. So I could see that one, sort of that smaller package. I could see that pricing going up, but it sounds like you're really factoring in the ongoing meetings and some of the accountability and monitoring between the meetings. That's really what they're paying that extra couple $1,000s for. So what have you seen? So you said you've done 18 plans. How do they break down between those two levels of plans?
It's primarily been on-track plans. So it's been actually 16 have been on-track plans, and I've had 2 that have been stewardship plans.
Okay. So with any of those, are you anticipating, creating long-term relationships with that planning structure, or, is it really sort of after the initial plan, maybe they come back a few years later, or do you want to try to get these clients to where you're meeting with them quarterly?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's, being that it's almost been 2 years now, a few of the first people that I did plans with have renewed. And then a few of them, I've had a couple that have not. And that's always, you're kind of setting up the business where that renewal is a very big deal. An observation is that if I have advisory as well as the planning, that I would get more, the renewal rates increase. And so it's interesting how that kind of works a little bit. But part of it is also that they're doing fine. Like we do the help, we get them where they need to be, and then they continue on their way. And that's fine too. So I don't, I'm okay with that scenario that's a little bit more like a project-based scenario. So, ultimately though, I think where I'm going as a firm is and what I want to try and grow to with a structure is that I definitely want to focus on trying to do a little more with advisory and being in that space. So that's where I'm trying to grow. And then the place where I'm trying to potentially change the structure is a few folks in my mastermind group have helped me talk through the idea of having like a minimum fee. So maybe I would have a minimum fee of $1,500 to be a client. And then if there's someone in this category that, I've mentioned is a big deal to me to serve the lower end clients that may not be able to afford that I could have a structure for, some pro bono work or something along those lines where they can still get access to the help, but without being able to meet that, minimum level of fee. And then other folks have talked about, I'm looking at this, exploring it now, the idea of having, your advisory be able to kind of offset the fees for planning. And that's something I'm exploring as well as an idea, because I think with something like that, it helps structure the client wanting to do advisory in addition to the planning, as opposed to what I've seen now, which is, hey, let's start with planning. All right, this is great. We're done with planning. We've had our 3 meetings. Now I'm good for a while, and I don't want to stay engaged to do the advisory. So it's an interesting little mix that you got to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that you're putting advisory clients on Betterment and Motif. You have a few more on Motif than Betterment. Talk to me about why you've made the decision to have 2 platforms and sort of how you make a decision for each client, which one they go with.
Yeah, I'm at a point now where I'm trying to do most new clients. I'm, going with Betterment. I've been really impressed with how they've been making adaptations for the advisor. And I am looking at, the XY investment portfolio offering as well. I'm keeping an eye on that. But the reason, and I don't think it's a good idea to have 2.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Are they so distinctly different it's worth the headache that is managing 2 platforms?
Well, there are distinct differences, and I thought that would be a very big deal for clients to be able to have that latitude in the differences of the offering. But I don't think of that. I think I've misread that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But from me, it's been difficult having two platforms because operationally there's different things you have to do. And so I was sharing in the mastermind group with other advisors. I was saying, it's tough having two different platforms. It's like the guy with two watches. If you ask the guy with two watches what time it is, he's never really sure because he doesn't know which one's totally right. So
sure.
It's similar, but yeah. So Motif, what I love about Motif is they have the latitude to be able to, go buy individual stocks. And you can lump a number of ETFs and stocks and other positions into one Motif, one basket. You can have 30 different positions and you buy that for $30 and there's no platform fee. And so it's kind of a very low cost way to be able to grab some positions and have them, and that's the part that I've liked about them. I feel like they're low cost and they have latitude to buy stock. And some clients want that, or some clients are essentially rolling over something with a low cost basis and they don't want to sell it. They just want to hold it. Well, you can do it in Motif. In Betterment, they're still struggling.
Right. You haven't been able to do that at Betterment with holding legacy positions, particularly in brokerage accounts.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been, a little bit of a sticking point for them. And you see that sometimes, like some of the clients I have, they're older clients and they have some great positions they bought a long time ago that they don't want to part with. And if you don't have a platform to move them over, you're not going to be able to move them over. So
no, that makes sense. What is your AUM on each of those platforms now?
So it's growing. Right now in total, I'm at 3.7. So I'm at 1 on Betterment, just past 1.1. And then with Motif, I've had that for longer, but I'm transitioning more into Betterment.
Okay. Makes sense. One of the things that Maddie from our team had mentioned that you've done some really interesting work with there in California is working with clients that are victims of the wildfires that seem to be hitting California every year now. And the one that's blazing right now, we're getting smoke up here in Montana, but from that fire. So obviously a lot of damage and devastation going on. So can you talk to me about the work that you've done with those clients and sort of how you got into that space?
Well, I mean, in December of last year, the Thomas Fire hit Ventura, and largest wildfire in California history. And of course, when something like that hits, it takes everybody by surprise. And so where I live, we did not have to be evacuated, and we were fine as far as the experience of the fire. But there were over 1,000 homes that burnt, and so there's just so much going on with something like that. It really took, I had 3 clients that lost their home, and then I had another 3 that had severe damage to their homes.
Wow. 6 clients having to deal with that at one time. That's huge.
Yeah. But it's the thing that's, unique about it, with one of them, we're talking, immediately, that for the most part, they had already went to their insurance. And the insurance, because it was such a catastrophic event, I think the insurance company didn't run their normal process, and they just said, "Hey, we recognize what happens. Here's here's what we're going to give you," and they essentially gave them like the cap on what their insurance was. Like for example, personal property. Normally you have to itemize your list of what was lost, and you have to try and substantiate that. And in their case, they'd said, "Hey, you don't have to do that. We're going to take it easy on you. Here's the cap of what your insurance provided. We're just going to give that to you." And so the insurance companies, for the most part, initially it was hard because there's just a lot of questions. But because it was such a catastrophic thing and so many homes were lost, they really made the process a lot easier. And that was the experience. But there's still so much to deal with. The one thing that I thought my clients would want more help. But to be honest with you, like a lot of time, they're kind of, I don't know, they're kind of dealing with it in their own way, and I don't want to get in their way. Like I want to be there for them, and I've let them know that we can help them through it. But it's such a unique thing where it's almost like the idea of, it's almost like survivor's guilt in some ways, where it's like I feel for them and I don't know how to help them, but I want to be sensitive to their needs, but I just can't even relate to what that would feel like. And so it's tricky in many ways. But when you think about things like, for example, the document vault and putting your documents and scanning them and having them in the vault, that's been something we've talked about for a long time. But a lot of people just look right past it. And nowadays, and when it hits right in your backyard, it hits home that things like these are happening. I think people, they say, yeah, we need to do this. We definitely need to do this.
Yeah.
Because people lost, they lost everything. A client I sat with yesterday, she lost her home, and she was telling me, she's like, it's tough because, all my passwords, like I had them written down, and I had them in a file cabinet written down, put away. So it was real tricky having to go remember all my passwords and reset all my passwords to everything and not having anything. So there's just things that get kind of tricky.
Yeah, I guess a good reason to recommend like a LastPass to our clients. Those are the things we don't think about. I think as advisors, we're very focused on, what the CFP curriculum teaches us, but even something as simple as implementing a password manager that's really secure, but it's cloud-based, so that when your book of passwords burns down, you can get on a new computer, log into LastPass and have access to everything that you need. Because I think in my LastPass, I have something like 600 username and passwords stored right now. I do not, sometimes I don't even remember if I have a username and password until LastPass tells me that I do. I'm on a website and I'm like, oh, I do have an account here, but I just can't imagine trying to track all that down and all the variations of passwords and all that. So maybe something to add to the list of recommendations for disaster planning, can be part of the estate planning process, whether that be if you were to pass away, who has your password, but also, what happens if house burns down, that you want to have access to that.
Yeah, exactly. That's important. And you really start to realize it when you see stuff like this happening in the beginning stages, though, with the fire and the fires that are happening right now here. It's such a, if you're an advisor for anyone going through that, I think it's important just to let them know that you're there, and that you're there for them for anything that they might need. But a lot of times with something so emotional, it takes a little while for them to figure it out.
So, Mike, thank you for all of this. This has been awesome just to learn more about your practice and the work that you've been doing. So as we're coming to a close, I'll ask you the final question, and that is, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self, one thing you've learned that you think would have been helpful to know earlier in your career, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Well, I got some great advice from a few people in Rotary, and one of the things that someone shared with me that really appreciated, that I've appreciated over the years, is he said, Mike, don't worry about your future. You're going to be all right. And in many ways, like, I've worried about my future all the time, and I still do. But sometimes I think back to him saying that, and here's a young, I was a young me, and I'm still he's an older gentleman in his 70s. But for some reason, that really helped me to just anchor to that thought and be like, you know what, it's going to be okay. And I think it's very fascinating, Alan, and this could be a whole different topic of conversation at some point. But the idea that you get wisdom from folks that are older, and the wisdom that they give you can't find that on Google and have it resonate the same way. Like when he told me that, I've carried that with me for years now. And it's really helped me from some of those struggling times where times get tough and you're wondering, I don't know if I made the right decision. Maybe I should just change jobs or do something like that. So it's really hard. And, and those are the moments where you really need that sound wisdom from someone with experience, not necessarily the quickest, confirmation bias you can find in Google. So it's funny and it's tricky, but I think that's a big one, is just to have that, that belief in yourself, and that kind of, understanding that you gotta get started and you gotta go, and you can't worry about your future too much. You're gonna be all right. Just stay the course. So.
That's great advice, because many of us are very focused on the future and forget to just pay attention to what's going on today, and sometimes miss out. I'm certainly guilty of that, of staying too focused on where things are headed instead of just enjoying where things are at sometimes. Yeah,
we just worry about it too much sometimes. We really do. But hey, we didn't get to mention it too much, but I'm thrilled. My 2-year anniversary is coming up, and I feel like the 3rd year is going to be really big for me. I feel like I'm really turning a corner to where I'm very comfortable with my process and my offering. And even recently, I've had some wonderful meetings from some of, my website people that have discovered me. And I feel like all the help you guys have been given is really coming to a head. And I'm really excited for what's ahead.
That's awesome to hear. It's so relieving when you can feel like I've made it, and we do see that in that 2 to 3 year mark. So if you're in those first couple of years and you're still grinding away, keep grinding. Eventually you will be able to come on this podcast and say like, I'm feeling really good. Like things are looking good. So yeah. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your wisdom and expertise and sort of your career path. So thank you so much.
Alan, thank you. Best of luck, buddy.
Support for today's episode comes to you from Orion Advisor Services. Simplify the complexities of running an advisory business with the industry's most integrated portfolio management technology platform. Built to reflect your needs, customized to achieve your goals, and delivered with the support you need to be successful. Get back to the business of serving your clients with technology that works for you. Learn more at orionadvisor.com. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.